Just flipped it, and so I wanted to go play putt-putt.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard. It was harder than I thought. It's a nice little touristy place right there.
Yeah, always give
We need that at the downtown. Little mini golf.
Oh, she's out.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Wednesday, June 30th, 2021 special town council meeting for the town of Scarborough, Maine. First thing is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
America, to the republic for which it stands,
under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
liberty, justice for all.
Item number 3 is roll call. Tony?
Counselor Clucci?
Here.
Counselor Gleisteen?
Here.
Counselor Anderson?
Here.
Counselor Katarina?
Here.
Counselor Johnson?
Here.
Counselor Hamel?
Here.
And Chairman Johnson?
Here.
All in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, if there's no objections, I would like to make a quick adjustment to the agenda. At the end, right before adjournment, I will put counselor comments. So if there's no objection, we will have counselor comments right before adjournment. And if I forget, somebody just remind me because I don't have my pen with me. So, okay, with that, we're on to order number 21054. It's a 6 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed 2021 Town of Scarborough Comprehensive Plan. And so we'll do the public hearing aspect of it first. Mr. Merrill, did you want to start with an introduction? Yep. Do you want a visual aid or are we just speaking to it?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. Dave Merrill, current chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. And really all I want to do is thank all the participants over the last 3.5 or 4 years that have been involved with this process. We've had many citizens, experts, consultants, town committees, town boards, experts come in and give us myriads of information to wade through over the last, again, 3.5 years. We've tried to put forward the best plan we can. I want to thank all the counselors, the current counselors. The last 6 to 8 months have really put a new spin on this plan, and I think we've improved it dramatically over the last few months from where we were near the end of COVID. So COVID was a bit of a shot. It slowed us down. We thought we were ready, but with a new council and some constructive comments, I think we've done a phenomenal job to pull it together. Lastly, I think, and most importantly, the 3 thanks I have are for Jay, Karen, and Jamal, who saw us through this process. It was a hefty way for all of them. Jay especially put in countless hours, held us all together and gave us solid direction all the way along the way. So I want to thank Jay. And we look forward to the vote tonight for a positive outcome and look forward to implementing this with your priorities in order. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir. And I believe, Jay, you're going to make a quick presentation.
Yep, I can do probably about a 5-minute presentation. So thank you. So as Dave just noted, this is the 2021 comprehensive plan that's being recommended to you from the Long Range Planning Committee. This work's really sort of been a culmination of, as was just said, a number of years of work, public input, revisions, and discussion. And so really excited to jump in or to see where tonight takes us. I'll leave it at that. So just a quick overview. I'm just going to go over sort of what, just so folks appreciate, as was said, this has been going on for a number of years. I'm going to do about a 5-minute presentation. Those that are interested in more information are certainly welcome to go look at past presentations that have been made that are on the website. We did a sort of a more in-depth discussion at the June 9th, I believe it was, public hearing. So if folks see this and are interested in more information, certainly take a look there, or of course, take a look at the whole comp plan. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what a comprehensive plan is, our process to date, touch on a couple of the big picture themes in the plan, changes that we've seen with the 21 plan from the 2020 draft plan that we had, and what's next. So with that, next slide. So the comprehensive plan provides a blueprint that reflects the community's priorities and values. It really establishes a framework for targeted regulations, investments, and decisions moving forward. What it is not is, though it is a plan, there is further work required for implementation of this plan. And that is really an ongoing process that's shaped by further public discussion and process. So with the next slide, just quick history. Our current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2006. State requires plans to be updated every so often, and we are at that time. The 2021 plan really builds, we've talked a lot about in the past about how the 21 plan builds off the foundation of the 2006 plan. But with adoption of this plan will replace the 2006 plan. So just the next slide, really, this plan is, though it builds on the foundation of the prior plan, it takes a different approach. It's really more systematic, looks at sort of the synergies between diverse range of town activities, from housing and transportation, open space protection, budgets, infrastructures. And as this slide is intended to show, though council is really at the center, you all are the ones who approve and adopt new regulations. There's a lot of inputs that happen through the process. So the next slide goes through, we already talked about how this process has been going on for a number of years, and you can really, this lays out pretty nicely for folks what's occurred over those years, what type of meetings have occurred, the public inputs that have occurred. And really throughout this whole process, the Long Range Planning Committee and staff have really listened to the voices of the community through a number of different activities, whether it's traditional meetings, hands-on workshops, online engagement tools, surveys, and really it's helped inform. In July of 2018, we received our first draft of the comprehensive plan, and there was significant work that was done that really resulted in the 2020 draft that has been referenced. And then the work that we conducted just last fall and winter have really, again, informed and shaped the current plan that is before you tonight. With the next slide, I'll just touch on, again, a couple of the big themes. Comprehensive plans, 170 odd pages, so there's a lot in there. So this certainly isn't all inclusive, but really thinking about strategies for future land use, conservation, and growth moving forward. The plan really aims at a number of things. It's, retaining rural character west of the turnpike, protection of significant natural resources and open spaces, extension of infrastructure within growth areas, trying to direct the majority of growth into designated activity centers, enhance the livability of Scarborough's existing neighborhoods. Businesses continue to play a significant portion of our local tax base. And really future land use and zoning regulations are going to need to be adapted to work on the implementation of this plan. Next slide. So we've referenced it, and maybe I'll just take a pause and sort of remind folks that the Long Range Planning Committee actually in March of 2020 had recommended a comprehensive plan to the council. That was the week or just a few days before the global pandemic shut everything down. And so come late summer and fall, as we started to emerge, there was a discussion with council about, well, how do we sort of re-engage the public process? And so we held a series of public forums and an explicit or a specific workshop with council on the 2020 comp plan, and received a lot of great feedback. As Chair Merrill mentioned earlier, really helped shape this current plan. And so just touch on a couple of these. Some of the changes have been an addition of an implementation strategy, some further discussion about monitoring the pace and impact of growth. We added call outs regarding the impacts of COVID and the Downs development, two things that really came along as during this process. Enhanced sensitivity to social, cultural, and economic diversity. And then I guess the last one I just highlight of this list is that we had our friends at the Greater Portland Council of Governments do a copy editing process that really helped identify and smooth out some of the edges. And so I'll really just conclude with the review of the adoption process. It's been referenced, but it's worth referencing again. This is the third in a series of public hearings on this draft of the plan. And so you can see we held one on June 9th and on June 16th. And here we are at June 30th with this public hearing and the anticipated vote by council. And just to sort of wrap up, the adoption of the plan does require action by this council. And so we'll see if that occurs tonight. Hopefully it does. And just so folks also understand that following adoption, there is another process. The town sends the plan to the state. That's something that Karen and I are starting to work on the next few weeks, months. We'll get this sent up to the state after we do some, go through their checklists. And so the state does a review for consistency with their Growth Management Act. And we might anticipate some comments back from the state, and there'll be a bit of back and forth, but we'll ultimately get our way there. So that is all I have for slides. And I know there are a number of members of the Long Range Planning Committee. A few are here in the audience, and I think I saw a few on the screen as well here virtually with us. So with that, I'm sure we can answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you, Jay. Any members of anybody virtually or anybody in the public like to speak, whether you're on the Long Range Planning Committee or a member of the public or? Yes, sorry, I'm transitioning to the formal public hearing. Anybody? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and I will bring it to us. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move adoption of the 2021 Town of Scarborough Comprehensive Plan as recommended by the Long Range Planning Committee.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Councilor Katarina?
Yeah, I've been involved with this since 2018, and I know the work that's been put into this by a number of people, and I'd like to thank everyone, particularly the members of the public who are on the Long Range Planning Committee, and members of the public who also, had a say, who gave us feedback, who read the documents. It was very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to echo Councilor Katarina's comments, but also specifically thank Jay for his leadership in this, because I think doing this on top of the GMO, on top of the TMP, like you've had to deal with a lot this past year. And, now you set the bar up here, so I'm going to expect that every year. So I really appreciate everything you've done, as well as the Long Range Planning Committee and everybody else.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I just said, Jay, you're on your game tonight. I can tell the anxiety is there. You're crossing your fingers that it passes and you move to the next phase. It's fun to see, actually. You guys put a lot of fantastic work into this document. It's something you should be proud of. And I certainly hope it gets adopted.
Was that a motion to table? Or no? Just wanted to see Jay's face. Any others? Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I'd like to, thank the folks that worked on this. It goes back to the keepers of the keys, some folks that were on the Long Range Planning Committee that were there, with the 2006 plan, and, they soldiered on and made sure that we didn't lose the spirit of that and the intent of that you built upon. And I thank Jay before, but he needs to be thanked again. I believe in his sleep, he could probably recite, most of the new plan, but, he and his staff stuck through this. Their day jobs, the other work that they do is enormous by itself. This was a whole nother day job for them. So, and they took the feedback with good cheer. And I remember that well, because I was a very vocal critic in the beginning, and they listened to the feedback and they agreed with part of it and incorporated what they could and said, sorry, that's as far as we're going on a lot of the rest of it. So I think we all learned something in terms of how to deal with a tough piece of work, and we huddled together to get it done. And everyone deserves credit, but in particular, the town staff and the long rangers, sorry. But thank you, everybody. And I'm glad we're at this point, and I think we have a much better product because of it. Thanks.
Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I echo everything that's said. I think it's great work and a great document. And I mentioned before, I think the public put it on the bedside table once in a while, pick it up. You'll learn a lot about the town each time you read it. So again, great work. Thank you very much.
Any others? No, I think I echo everything. Jay, I mean, I agree. Jay and I have crossed paths in the hallways the last couple of weeks, and he can't believe it. It's coming to an end. So, so good for you and for all the work you put in. I'd also like to mention, I know the public hearings have been a little quiet, but Councilor Hamill touched upon it. We all listen. We all kind of have pockets of people we listen to, and there's certainly lots of people's voice in this document that aren't necessarily at the podium, but have reached out to Mr. Hamill or Councilor Katerina or what have you. So I know that the home stretch has been eerily quiet, but I have confidence that there has been a lot of public feedback that goes into this last concluding stretch we've had. And special thanks to John Anderson too. He first got elected and I threw it in his lap and said, hey, you're in charge of the timeline. And it ended up going so smooth towards the end. So it was a little easier, but I think you laying that out made a huge difference. And I know it was helpful to have that framework. So.
I think your precise words, give it to the new guy.
Yeah, or I don't want to deal with this thing or something like that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have an
Yep.
amendment,
Yep.
not to freak anyone out.
Yep.
Okay. I move to amend the motion with the proposed amendments to the plan as discussed during prior public hearings and included in the agenda packet as quote edits for consideration after May 28th posting, end quote.
And do I have a second?
Second.
And that's all the work the last couple of weeks. So I'll just call a vote on that. Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other hands, I will call the vote on the main motion as amended.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, now for the fun one. Order number 21058 is a 6 PM public hearing and action on the following new request for a food handler's license for Main Surf Supply located at 134 Black Point Road, and Jeffrey McLean, DBA Red Brook Honey LLC located at 311 Gorham Road.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would ask that there be a motion, well, I'm putting forward a motion to recuse myself from this since Jeff McLean is my husband and I'm involved in the business, so I shouldn't be voting on it. So I need to take an affirmative vote of. the
Oh, we do.
council.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on Jean Marie recusing herself? Okay, Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public like to speak to either one of these? No? Can I get a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Nobody wants to sink Jean Marie's honey business just for fun? No? My discussion is, this honey is phenomenal and you guys sell out every single year, I think, right? Yeah, so I know I know Ken Johnson and I throw elbows to try to get the honey, so. With that, a vote?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Order number 21059 is a 6 PM public hearing and action on a new request for a marijuana establishment license from a novel beverage company located at 137 Pleasant Hill Road, Unit 1 for a medical marijuana products manufacturing license. I am going to have Liam come in. This is it's a little bit new, so I think it's worth some explanation for all of us. So Liam, I'm going to promote you as a panelist.
Thanks, Paul. So just a brief introduction to this license. This is a currently licensed establishment. They went through the process last fall for a adult use marijuana manufacturing license. It was approved without issue. They're a fairly well-organized group. They have come forward now for a medical marijuana license, medical marijuana manufacturing license. It's been inspected as a follow-up inspection after the build out, and staff has no objections with the approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Liam before we put it on the floor?
Question.
Yep,
Liam?
Counselor Johnson, and then Counselor Glycine after that.
Liam, this says Novell Beverage. Is this the outfit out of Colorado? You know?
I believe that one of the founders has some experience working in Colorado, but they're a Maine-based organization.
Okay, I was just wondering because I saw a news article on them. I was wondering if it was one and the same. All right,
They
thank
did.
you.
They did actually get some good publicity about. They partnered with, I believe, Shipyard to produce
Right.
some THC beverages. So, in terms of the other overarching concerns with marijuana establishments, there's really no odor concern with this group at all.
Right, thank you.
Counselor Glycine?
Yeah, so my question was kind of in general, if the manufacturing facility is making a food or beverage product, do they fall under other areas of regulation with the state where or the town where there have to be food safety inspections and cleanliness inspections and things like that?
Yeah, good question. They're not. I know that there have been some licenses, some manufacturing licenses that have come forward where we've required food handlers licenses. I certainly think that Tony and I can research whether that's applicable in this case. I certainly have confidence that OMP will partner with any other state agency in the event they need any sort of state food handlers license or anything affiliated with that. Again, this group is probably the most organized of any group that's come forward with a license. So I have no doubt that they're fully in compliance, and we can get back to you on whether there's a food handler obligation locally. I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Yeah, I haven't been able to really make it out in the law, and I know I don't believe we included it in our ordinance, but we do have things in our ordinance about manufacturers of candy and food and things like that. So I don't know if that's kind of a missing area to be addressed. But yeah, it's probably a good area to look into.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, any members of the public? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? No? Okay. Call the vote, Tony, please.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
No.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes,
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Order number 21052 is a second reading on the 2021 bond order for municipal and school capital improvements. This was tabled from our previous meeting. I believe it'll be tabled again because we wanted finance to look at this, and you guys have not met yet, right? Is that correct?
We're scheduled to meet on the 14th.
Okay.
And I had requested some additional detail.
Yep.
It includes, what the town council has authorized for these projects, how much has been spent to date, what we expect to spend. And I think that'll help complete the picture. So we're scheduled to meet on the 14th, 4 o'clock.
Okay. So let's take a motion a second, and we can still have discussion, but the finance chair will make a motion to table.
No discussion.
Oh, I just hadn't even put it on the floor yet. Can right out of the gate, can you motion to table?
You can.
Oh, I did not know
Okay,
that.
I'm going to motion to table.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay. With that,
Second.
a second?
Second.
Okay,
Just be clear, that's to table to
To when?
July
The
21st.
21st.
Okay.
so table to July 21st. Okay, Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
yes,
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
So it doesn't have to be seconded. First vote can be, I didn't know that. Order number 21055 is a second reading on the first amendment to the Scarborough Downtown Omnibus Municipal Development and Tax Increment Financing District and the development program therefore, and the approval of a credit enhancement agreement with Avesta US Route 1 LP relating to a proposed affordable housing project. And with that, before I put it on the floor, is anybody in the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I think we've had some pretty thorough discussions on this. And as folks know, I was disappointed again that we can't do the workforce housing, but I have a plan down the line. But I certainly hope that folks support this because I think it's going to be a fabulous project. And I noticed that I know I'm not talking about Vest here, but I noticed the developer now has on their sign that, you know, join, and then they have the names of the businesses going in there. So
Yep.
I think it'll be exciting.
Counselor Gleisteen?
Yeah, so I agree with Counselor Katarina. We've had a lot of discussion on it. I won't be supporting it tonight for several reasons that I've already given. But I hope the project goes really well. I think that it will. And you know, I think it, as Counselor Katarina said, it's going to be a great addition to the town in that area, especially with the new fish market and things like that. So what other retail they put there. I won't go back into the reasons of why I'm not supporting it, but I do wish the project all the best. And I think Avesta will do a great job.
Thank you. Any others? Counselor Clucci?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, thank you to Nate and Avesta for coming to town. And I'm proud that Scarborough is able to embrace projects like this. I know some of our neighboring communities are a little less receptive to affordable housing. And I think it's an important topic and it's important for our residents. So I'm proud that we're able to do things like this.
Thank you. Any others? No, I think the only thing I will add is Councilor Johnson brought up last time, but I think it's important. The CEA is just for one portion of this project. So when we look at what we're giving up, so to speak, I think what we get in return, not only will we have affordable senior housing, which is a huge plus, but I think it's going to lead to a much more successful project there. So I think it's important to realize, I know in the papers, it's easy just to kind of read that there's a tax break coming, but it's a large project. There's going to be a ton of value that's outside of the CEA. So I'm excited for it. Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen,
No,
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Order number 21060 is an act on the names posted to the various committees and boards as recommended by the Appointments Negotiations Committee at June 16th, 2021 Town Council meeting. Don, I'll let you tee it up and take that as a motion.
Thank you. This is a second notice. This will be the completion of the process for our approving appointments to various committees as follows. Board of Assessment Review, appoint James Percolidis as first alternate with a term to expire in 2021. Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee, appoint Mr. Darren Garnata as the first alternate with a term to expire 2023. For the Planning Board, move Richard DePerry from first alternate to full voting member with a term to expire 2023, and move Richard Scudder from second alternate to first alternate with a term to expire in 2022. And finally, the Zoning Board of Appeals, move Peter Freilinger from first alternate to full voting member with a term to expire 2021. Move the Roy Crockett from second to first alternate, term to expire 2022, and appoint James Percolidis at second alternate with a term to expire 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen,
yes,
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
It passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 21061 is the act on the request to ratify a 3-year contract with the Scarborough Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF, local number 3894, and to authorize the town manager to sign any and all documents. Tom or Liam? Liam? Okay, Liam, would you like to give a quick presentation?
I will. Counselor Hamel, did you want to tee it up first, or you want me to just jump into it? And
Yeah, thanks. There are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight here. You know, the good work that's been done by the town staff, led by Liam Gallagher. You know, he's been working with these unions and their negotiating committees, steadily. These are 2 of 3 current labor agreements that have been approved by their membership, the fire and EMS and dispatch. Both of those units are members of IAFF, and they're ready for town council approval this evening with implementation July 1. Each of them are 3-year agreements. We're pleased that they include the following key features. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but I did want to top line for us that we're using a new index, an employment cost index for wages and salaries. That we feel is a better, more predictable indicator than consumer price index type of survey that was done in the past. Second, Liam and the teams have worked hard to standardize wage increases that are normally time-based step increases to be increases rather that are for members who obtain additional certifications and trainings and skills for their jobs. And then finally, we have lump sum increases for hazard pay for these individuals related to their good work during COVID-19, which is funded primarily through stimulus measures. So I'm going to leave kind of the rest of the rest of the story and the highlights to Liam, but we're pleased that they're here. We expect the police contract will be close to follow in a few weeks, and we'll talk for a minute at the end about the additional one with the Teamsters and the maintenance workers unit, which is part of the Public Works Department.
Thanks, sir. With that, Liam, did you want to share something? Do you have capabilities?
I do, and I
Okay.
would like to. Yeah. So again, some of these slides the council were briefed on last week when we went through the contract. So these should all look somewhat familiar to the group. I think it's just important to go through a little bit of the context, some historical information, and then also talk about the process we undertook this year. So the last round of 3-year contracts, again, the fire department, we did do a 1-year contract this last time around, given all the challenges that came with COVID. So some of these do date back theoretically 2 contracts to the fire department, but it does highlight a number of the changes that these groups agreed to last time around. So the police department moved retirement plans, which actually generated a fair amount of savings to the employer costs. We looked at some creative solutions around the wage scale with the police department last contract to address some attraction and retention issues. We did some market adjustments within the dispatch unit to better recognize the varying responsibilities for lead dispatchers versus dispatchers. We eliminated no charge or no cost single healthcare coverage across the board, which we thought was a concept that was an antiquated one given the cost of insurance this day and age. We also indexed the lower cost of the 2 insurance plans within the police dispatch, and that extended to non-union as well groups, so that we were really, we sort of fixed our employer cost to a percentage of that lower cost plan, and that actually had a really meaningful effect. I think that of the 175 or so, 180 employees eligible for medical insurance. I think prior to that change, we had about 6 on that lower cost option. I think after that, it went to about a third. So it was a pretty significant shift that we saw in behavior, which is what was intended to do. The fire department moved to a high deductible medical insurance plan, a program that they've continued to maintain, which I won't go into any detail on that issue tonight, but it's been a mutually beneficial arrangement, we think. And just to speak to sort of the COVID impacts, police and dispatch had existing contracts through FY21, 3-year agreements. They did voluntarily defer their cost of living adjustment by 6 months. They're contractually, there's no obligation for them to do that. They did that willingly to help the town out to get us through this really challenging last year. And the 1-year agreement for the fire department, they also accepted. Again, it wasn't technically a deferral because they didn't have an agreement in place, but they did agree to a contract that did not provide a July 1 cost of living adjustment. So that's some of the context for where these groups have come from and some of the adjustments we saw last time. In terms of process this year, I think that, again, worked very closely with Councillor Hamill. One of the bits of feedback we had last time we ratified 3-year agreements was just the the amount of contact and exposure the council had to what was being discussed at the table. And as I think the group can appreciate, sometimes these things kind of come up to the 11th hour. I think there's certainly been some components of that this time around with some of the finer details. But we thought it was really important that the council or representative committee, in this case, the Appointments and Negotiations Committee, were really engaged in the process right from the start. And so we began discussions back in February. We had discussions behind closed doors about objectives that we would like to see. And a lot of this context was present in that initial discussion, where we've come from and where we'd like to go. So we set out a few objectives. The number one objective was to get to what I characterize as a reality-based COLA. I think that we've heard a lot of feedback from constituents, particularly around the budget process, when there are agreements in place that provide, 2.5%, 3.5% or higher percent cost of living adjustments, when many of our, or at least a portion of our residents are working on fixed incomes, and they're not seeing the same level of escalation to their fixed incomes. And so I think it makes for provides some friction to the process at that point. So that was certainly our first objective. We also were looking ideally to see some sort of deferral of a wage adjustment or a COLA in years 1 and 2 of the agreements. I think that was in one of the contracts we were able to achieve that. The other one we were not. But and we also had an eye to equity. Anytime we could try to square up terms across agreements and across employee groups, we certainly look to do that. But each group is somewhat unique. They have different challenges. And so I think you'll see somewhat of a variation across the board. So that's kind of the context and process that we went into these discussions with. And I'm pleased, and we'll get into this momentarily, that we, I think, achieved that with some level of success. So the fire collective bargaining agreement, this has a tremendous amount of changes to it. And the context for this is that of our 2 existing employee groups, we really thought that there was a compelling market argument for attraction and retention. We did some wage analysis out of the gate. We found we were on the lower end of, and actually lower than many of our competitors. Over the last few years, we have lost some staff to neighboring departments because the wages weren't where we thought they needed to be. So we certainly, and again, full credit to Chief Thurlow, right across the board. Him and the union president, Mike Haven, and their team really did a tremendous amount of work. I mean, we began discussions in the fall of 2019 initially with some operational items. Obviously, those discussions were sidetracked through COVID, but we restarted them in the fall of 20. And, I couldn't count how many meetings we've had, whether they're management meetings or labor management meetings or workshops or just negotiation sessions over the last 18 months. It's been countless hours of work. And again, Chief Thurlow really took on the lion's share of that analysis and work. So a new wage scale was developed. The group did agree to defer the implementation of that until January 1 of 2022. And so there is some savings in the FY22 budget that we stand to realize. And one of the things that you'll hear about in both this contract and the dispatch contract, while this wasn't an objective of the ANC or of the group, I certainly would say that one of the themes that we've heard from the council, particularly with regard to budgeting, is this idea of predictable increases and more consistent increases and cost escalators. And so a lot of these contracts, the way they were structured with their wage scales was 3, 4, 5% wage adjustments every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So there are larger increases over larger periods of time. And in this contract, we've actually modeled more of what the non-union folks have, which is a 1.25% essentially longevity step. But it's on an annual basis. So it's a more easily predictable escalator from year to year. So that was certainly a benefit that we saw, in addition to addressing the market issues. COLA in years 2 and 3, there is a 3-month deferral of the COLA implementation in year 2. Year 3, they return to the July 1 start of the fiscal year implementation date. And they are on the employer cost index that Councillor Hamel referenced at the onset of this discussion. It's a ECI range, no less than 1%, no more than 4%. So if ECI is 4.5%, they're capped at 4. If it's less than 1, they're still getting a 1% adjustment, so a fairly modest rate. We did put in some historical information. So this group, the fire department in particular, over the last, I think, 7 years leading up to the collective bargaining process, had averaged about 2.6% cost of living adjustment. And the ECI over that same period of time was 2.1%. So there would stand, if that trend continued, we would stand to see a smaller increase year to year. Again, I do want to underscore, I think it's important to underscore that we're not looking, this isn't purely intended to mitigate the budget impact. It's simply, I think that, and I think I have some agreement on the council, but I don't want to speak for anyone, that if the cost of living is 3%, they should get a 3% cost of living adjustment. It's intended to keep up with inflation, and it's not intended to be arbitrary. And so this achieves that. Now, if there are some savings, because that's what is happening with inflation, that's fine. But that's really not the driving force behind the concept. It's really to get back to something closer to reality. And just to touch on that, Paul, I have all night, right?
I'm sorry, I dozed off for a second. What was that?
All right. The employer cost index is it's a BLS, it's a Bureau of Labor Standards metric. And what this is pegged to is state and local government workers, and it's wages and salaries. So it's a very unique subset that they're looking at. And that's the metric. It's, again, not a consumer price index, that we're not concerned with what the price of groceries necessarily is doing, or however that is calculated in this statistical world. But it is a very unique and targeted piece. And it's a model that was actually born out of a compensation study the town undertook about 8 years ago, and is the metric that non-union employees have been subject to for that entire period of time. So just to speak to that. ARPA. ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act, which I think has gotten a fair amount of fanfare as the last large round of stimulus. Included in that act was the ability to provide premium pay for essential workers during the course of the pandemic. These are wholly federal dollars. Again, it comes out of our pot of money. Again, I believe Scarborough, Tom would have the specific figure, but I think it's in where we've been earmarked to get about $2.2 million in ARPA funding over the next 24 months. So we plan on, if approved, utilizing some of those funds to recognize really the tremendous efforts that our first responders undertook during the last 15 months. So again, we are proposing to pay this retroactive stipend of $1.75 for this group dating back to March 15th through essentially the end of the fiscal year 21. So again, about that 15-month period, it's a substantial sum of money. There's no getting around that. $167,000 in direct payments. When you add on retirement, you're right about $200,000 for this group. But this is a group that we ask to show up every day and respond to positive or presumptive positive patients through the course of a pandemic. And we think that was worthy of some recognition and appreciation. And I think that while we've talked to some of our counterparts, there are some who are planning on utilizing these funds for this purpose. I think a lot aren't, which again is certainly a local decision, but I think it's certainly worthwhile in this regard. And through utilizing those funds, we're really leveraging the federal funds to obtain some of our other economic objectives. And so I think that it's a smart use of those funds, again, strategically, to get to this reality-based COLA and some of the deferrals you'll see in these agreements, but it is a substantial sum of money that, to Councillor Hamill's earlier comments, doesn't compound. It's a one and done payment at the onset of the contract. Some other strategic initiatives in this contract, paramedic, attracting and retaining paramedics has proven to be a challenge. We do have a paramedic incentive plan where we will provide a $6,000 bonus for someone obtaining a paramedic license through the course of their employment. There's some other pieces in there of the program about funding some of the education required, covering some of the class time, not nearly as rich as some other departments have seen, but certainly it makes it a worthwhile proposition. And that is something it's a deferred payment. So it's not upon signing, you get a check for $6,000. If they leave the next day, they get to keep it all. It is deferred over really 3 years. There's also a $3,000 essentially signing bonus obtained after, I think, a year of employment for any new hires that come in with a paramedic level license. license. So really, this is about level of service for the community. This department, I think it may be known by many of you, I believe was perhaps the first EMS service in the state. There's a long history of excellent care, and we're looking to maintain that into the future. Double time for holdovers with less than 24 hours notice. So this is an instance where we have an employee show up. They like most people, have lives outside of work, and we inform them essentially when they report to duty for their 24-hour shift that they're either going to need to be held over for 12 hours, so they're not going to be able to go home for 36 hours from when they start their shift, or they need to report back to work within 12 hours of leaving. And so that sort of short notice component has caused a lot of friction with the group. And so we felt like it doesn't happen terribly often. Certainly this is an incentive for us to not have it happen. But we think it's worthy of some additional compensation in that regard. We are proposing to increase the clothing and cell phone allowance. So right now it's $630. We're proposing to increase it to $800 annually. This is also paired with a uniform standard, and we're kind of taking the administrative burden out of doing the reimbursement process that we have now. And also recognizing that they do use their personal cell phones, on the job to communicate with one another through various stations. And so that's something we think is worthy of some consideration. Physical fitness incentive is something that, again, has existed in concept in the contract in prior versions. It's nothing that we've ever ironed out. We have finally ironed that out. And again, this is for those who are familiar with public safety in general, but fire and police, there is a tremendous amount of stress that comes with the job. We think it's certainly worthwhile beyond sort of the occupational workplace injuries, incentivizing a better or higher level of physical health, but also just from a cardiac stress standpoint, we think there's a real benefit to that. So we paired that with a reasonable incentive. And then there's some other operational changes. Right now, the pool position is actually an antiquated term as of this contract. That's not a term we're going to be using moving forward. But we staff our platoons at 8 staff members. That 8th position has the ability to move and fill vacancies for either vacation or workplace injuries or sick time, so that we're not backfilling that first vacancy with overtime. We've retained the ability now to plug that person into a per diem slot in addition to a full-time slot in the event it really intended to offset some of those overtime expenses. So again, it kind of defers that overtime. We now have the ability to schedule per diems for up to 48 hours per week. Previously, we were capped at 36 hours. That's part of a per diem shift filling policy. And we've also expanded the ability for our full-time staff to fill in per diem shifts, which will largely be at straight time as opposed to overtime. So right now they can obtain one of those shifts once every other week. Now we've made it weekly, which again, we think will bring down the overtime expenses associated with it. So that's the fire contract in a nutshell. That's as brief as I can be, Paul.
So, let's take questions on that. And then Liam, do you want to I know they're 2 separate items, but we'll have you do the dispatch overview as well. And then that way we'll just roll through the 2 items. So are there any questions on the fire contract presentation? Questions, not our comments. Okay, so Liam, with that, why don't you just roll that right into the dispatch? And then that way we can go to full screen and finish it up.
So again, dispatch, like the fire department, we've done, it's not as clean as a 1.25% increase from year to year. Essentially what we've done is we've averaged out the existing scale between steps. So whereas, the current scale would have, the starting pay would be $20, and then after 2 years, you go to $22. We've implemented a step in between, and where after 1 year, you go to 21. So you sort of split the difference. Again, that will provide a better predictor and a phased in, I guess, cost escalators in that regard. We have agreed to a 1.8% COLA on July 1. So while there's no deferral, certainly a 1.8% is based on the ECI for the 12-month period that ended in December of 2020, which is the same metric we've applied to non-union. So at least there's some consistency there. And again, historically, it's lower than what it has been. COLAs in years 2 and 3, again, will be ECI. They have a slightly higher floor than the fire department at 2 to 4 range, so no less than 2%, no greater than 4%. And again, we fully expect that if the historical trends continue, there will be a savings year over year if ECI continue to trend at on average 2.1 versus what the historical average for this contract has been at 2.6%. There is a new requirement for lead dispatchers. Again, this is a unit where we have 4 lead dispatchers and essentially 11 people that hold the title of dispatcher. The 4 leads are going to be obligated to obtain their EMD, EFD, QA, QC certification. So again, this is their ability to handle the quality assurance, quality control for calls. We think in addition to just being able to fulfill that function, it just is a higher level of training for our leads and supervisors, which we think is worthwhile and beneficial. And that's something that we're going to credit a 2% wage adjustment for those lead dispatchers. That's sort of the justification for it. This is a group, again, that at the onset of the last agreement, I think there was only a 5% variance between a lead dispatcher and a supervisor, and we thought that that needed to be a larger span. So this is intended to work towards that end result. Currently in the existing contract, there's a stipend for employees who either have their EMT license or their reserve police officer certification. Again, it was 18 cents an hour. The value to certainly the EMT license really predated the emergency medical dispatcher certification, the EMD, which is really a script that all dispatchers are obligated to follow. So whereas before, when there was no prescribed script, having someone with that background and knowledge was really beneficial to the sort of the treatment on the other side of the phone. But that's really been replaced. So it's really about updating the relevant certifications and recognizing those. So that's a positive shift, we think. There is an ARPA stipend component to this group as well. It's a lower figure than what the fire department had. Again, we tried to match, tried to take into consideration what steps we could take with each one of these groups during that period of time. This was a group where we were able to pare back their hours and to try and minimize exposure and contact, and recognizing that there's likely less risk in a kind of enclosed dispatch center than there is dispatching firefighters and EMTs to actual calls with symptomatic individuals. So 90 cents an hour for this. Again, still not an insignificant sum. I would point to the fact that, again, there are really 2 points here. One, they showed up every day. They maintain, no firefighter, EMS professional, or police officer goes out the door without our dispatchers. So they're absolutely essential and had to do that work through the pandemic. And this really, this is another example of us leveraging these federal funds to obtain some of our other financial long-term objectives that will have a positive impact on the local taxpayer. The last piece is they did come forward and request to be enrolled in the special plan 3C. This is currently a 2.9% increase in cost to the employer over the plan they're currently enrolled in, which is the standard AC plan under Maine PERS. And so we were amenable to that so long as essentially they fund it through a decrease in their employer matching contribution to the 457 plan. So prior to this, they're eligible for a 4% matching contribution. For employees in Maine PERS, they will only receive a 1% match to that 457 plan. So they're effectively funding it, funding that change and that increased cost. So that's dispatch, the dispatch agreement in a nutshell.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Liam before I? No, Liam, thank you very much. I know there's a lot of information there, but there's a ton of work that went into it, and you have a summary. So go ahead and summarize it. Did you want to do the summary?
Yeah, I do. Sure.
Yeah.
I've only been briefly talking. So again, I think the big takeaways here for the council is really moving to a reality-based COLA, a metric-based COLA, which certainly has the potential to bring down future budget commitments. It's historically lower than what the negotiated COLAs have been. Again, that's not the entire objective here. It's really about addressing what those escalators are and what it's intended to be, which is to keep up with inflation on some level. One-time use of ARPA funds, I think does, again, as I said, recognizes the efforts of our first responders, allows for and those long-term structural changes, and lump sum payments don't compound. They're not going to build year over year with cost of living adjustments and other pieces. And I think some of the contractual changes, I think that we continue, and I think this has really been a theme over the last few contracts, we're really deliberate in how we're allocating our funding. It's not about always cutting expenses, but it's making sure that we're getting a return on our investment through staff investments in training or education or licenses. And I think that this is continuing that trend. And so I think for all those reasons, I think these are two fairly comprehensive, fair contracts worthy of consideration.
Thank you, sir. With that, I will take a motion for, we need to do them one at a time. So we're still on order number 21061. So a motion for the firefighters contract ratification
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Clucci?
Yeah, I'm just thankful that we have experts like Liam and Counselor Hamel that can work through all these details. And that the parties were able to meet somewhere in the middle where they're happy and we seem to be happy with the end result. So thanks for all your hard work, Liam and Counselor Hamel, and appreciate it.
Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing. I know that not only does Mr. Gallagher put in a lot of time and effort, Mr. Hamel, the Appointments and Negotiations Committee also reviews contracts. So these have been thoroughly looked at, and I think the public should be happy with the results. I plan to support them.
Thank you. Any others? Counselor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to again echo the sentiment to thank Liam and Counselor Hamel. And I want to comment on the use of the ARPA funds. I think that's a really, really good call. I know we haven't had the opportunity as a council to talk about how we use those, but this is a really great use of those and recognizing our first responders. So I'm really glad to see that that was on the table and that was brought forward.
Any others? No, a couple things. Number one, I remember when Council Hamlin and I first got elected, I think appointments and negotiations wasn't a very active committee. And I think you took it upon yourself to make it a very active committee. And I think this is, again, this is not something that easily translates to the public, but this is a huge improvement, I believe, over the way things were done previously. So hats off to you, Councilor Hamel, and to Liam and Tom for being receptive to it, because I think that all of a sudden, well, I don't think you did. I think Tom was pretty adamant. And just to echo what John said, I think when you hear that we're going to get $2.2 million in stimulus money, everybody starts thinking, well, that's good. We're going to increase our cost basis. Well, here's a great example that we actually leverage that money to get a more predictable and probably slightly lower cost basis, and did right by our members of the fire squad. So, I mean, what a great way to use the funds. It actually leverages them to our advantage. And so kudos to everybody for coming up with it. So I think with that, we'll take a vote. Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
And with that, I'll move right on to order number 21062, which is act on the request to ratify a 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the town of Scarborough and the Scarborough Public Safety Dispatchers Association, IAFF, local number 5174. Do I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
And
Chair, if
yes.
if I may, before we move off the
Sure.
labor items,
Yep.
I think I missed the chance to make a comment about.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole schlemiel here, but
Yep.
yeah, Liam, I think if we were to, turn the clock back 3 years, you may have remembered when I was, questioning what we were doing or not doing about contracts. So maybe we're going to rue that day forever, when we said we wanted to get more involved in the process. But thank you for that. I think it has paid off. And I think that we have failed to mention the good work of the Appointments and Negotiations Committee. And we put the N, in Appointments and Negotiations, ANC. And if there's any question, there is more detail in the packet. You can read the actual language of the red line of the contract changes, and we'd be happy to provide additional links to BLS and for those who want to learn more. The one there is I want to take the opportunity. We're not completely done yet because we still have the police contract we've got to go through, and we have a new bargaining unit. We really haven't said much about that as a group, but I'd like to take the opportunity just to make a few points on that. And one is, we have a track record here as a town in terms of our relationship with our employees, our union and non-union employees. And we've got a great track record in terms of fire, EMS, dispatch, and police. You know, it's well established that we're consistent and fair and predictable in how we deal with those groups. We are in fact an employer of choice. We have deep experience and expertise and have had stable employment over a long period of time. Proof of this fact is that Scarborough provides services from these areas to support other towns. You know, and that is a reflection of the commitment and quality of our management staff and all of our employees and their good work. We're currently engaged in discussions with IBT Teamsters Local 340 on behalf of a newly organized unit of maintenance employees in our Public Works Department. It's a unit of about 15 people, primarily road maintenance and snow removal. These talks are in the early stages now of the state mediation process. Another meeting is scheduled in the next few weeks. The next step after that is fact finding. I wanted everyone to be clear, we're committed to continue these talks in good faith with this new unit and look forward to a successful outcome here, but also one that is consistent with our approach to other labor relations for the town. Fair, labor market competitive, in parity with other staff, and cost effective for the town. So we've come a long way in the past 3 years, and hopefully, you know, we'll continue, you know, with our current units and the newest arrival.
Thank you, sir. Yep. With that, we're on to item number 4, which is councilor comments. Councilor Hamel kind of kicked it right off, so we'll take that as the first councilor comment. With that, are there any others? Councilor Gleisten.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you adding this time, and I apologize that I could not be there with you guys tonight. Unfortunately, this is going to be my last council meeting. I am resigning tonight. Not because I want to, or not because I have any ill will towards anyone on the council, or are sometimes a little bit rough and tumble politics. I love it all, love the town, but I've had some, you know, personal life changes that have impacted in funny ways and taken a few unexpected turns. And I am literally, for a short period of time, not a resident of Scarborough, which means I cannot be and should not be a town councilor. I will be back in September. I won't be a councilor, obviously, because I'm stepping. So I expect to hear from me, and I look forward to the charter vote, the elections, and all the great things that are going to be coming up in Scarborough. Scarborough is an absolutely fabulous town. Serving as a counselor has been one of the greatest honors of my life, and I think it will always be that. The staff in the town is just truly second to none. Dedicated, hours and hours of work, professional, just top notch. The town, you know, just in so many ways could not be better run. Of course, I don't agree with everything. I'm a little bit known for that. Speaking up, asking questions, pushing back a little bit. I would, you know, encourage my fellow counselors to embrace the dissent, embrace the discussion, embrace the questions, wherever they come from, whatever quarter they come from, even if you don't love the messenger or you don't like the messenger a little bit, or how the message comes out. The outcome is always better when the entire council is represented, when there are seven folks and they represent different parts of the town and different voices. So that would be my little tiny minor advice. I don't think I have very good advice beyond that. I learned a lot. I came into this, you know, with some ideas, and I learned some of my ideas were right and some of them were not right. So I say that with all humility. I hope I've always acted with integrity. My major goal was to give people a voice, and I feel like I've done that. I am very disappointed to have to cut my term short. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, and I wish you the best. And I will be around. And I will say my final local government rocks. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Any other comments? Counselor Johnson?
Well, I add something, but actually it's really not that important right now. Thank you for your service, Betsy. Wish you all the luck.
Thank you, Ken.
Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I'm surprised by this, Betsy, but I get it. And I certainly understand, having different voices is important in this world. We just need to listen to one another and try to find a happy medium. And I wish you all the best, and I thank you for your service. So good luck with whatever you're up to next. Life's always an adventure.
you.
One door closes, another one opens. I've
Right.
learned that over
Yeah.
life, so.
Higgins in the fall should be fun.
Good.
Counselor Cucci?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, we've served together for a couple of years now, and it's been a pleasure working with you. I think you're not afraid to use your voice. We disagree plenty, but we found plenty of common ground as well. Whatever you're going through, I wish you all the best, and I'm sure you're going to come out on top. You're a very strong voice and a strong activist, and I'm sure we're going to hear and see you in the future. So best wishes, Bessie.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Counselor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Betsy, for your service and for your meticulousness and everything that you do and go after, and for truly trying to represent the people. So I really appreciate that. So thank you and best of luck.
You
Counselor
as
Hamel?
well. Thank you so
Oh.
much.
I'm sorry. Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, thanks, Betsy, for the chance to serve with you. I admire your conviction and your commitment and your ability to sway people on issues. So I haven't always aligned with that, but you've added a lot of value throughout your service, and I wish you well and what's ahead for you and your family.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, Betsy, I think, you acknowledge that you're in the minority a lot, but I think that your voice is very much, even when you are a no, that your voice is very much in our final product. And sometimes that goes overlooked. But I think I can probably rattle off 6, 7, 8 things off the top of my head that even though you're a voice of one, sometimes you influenced it. I mean, and that's pretty impressive because most of the time it usually takes 4 or 5 to influence something. So, you and I have been at war together sometimes publicly, but I know that our conversations privately and emails have always been very thoughtful. And I do consider you a friend, and I hope that you agree. And I can't wait for my first email from resident Betsy Gleistein, because I'm sure it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, Yeah, those are great comments. I really appreciate that, Paul. You all do a great job. I admire all of you and everything that you do. I did sing the praises of the staff, but you guys work very hard. I'm impressed by this council. I would think that, we've kept the staff on their toes, and we've pushed for some things that, needed to be changing. The communications are better. We're getting a little more with it, with the technology and things like that. And I think some of those things have come out of this council that is very involved and really wants to get their hands dirty. And I totally admire that. And you guys do an excellent job.
I think Tom wants to say something.
Yeah, certainly. Hopefully it's not inappropriate to speak during councilor comment, but the opportunity, I just can't let pass by. Betsy, I just really need to express, hearing you say that embrace the dissent and kind of challenging those that you're leaving here to do that. And that's certainly something you've lived by. Personally and professionally, being the one that's on the end of the inquiry very often, I've come to appreciate and really I've never questioned your purpose, because I know you're strong with your convictions, and I really come to appreciate that about you. So I appreciate your service and I suspect you're not going too far.
Well, I really appreciate that, Tom, and you guys you and your staff are just, like I said, second to none. Just the town is very, very lucky of the level, the quality of staff that we have. I mean, honestly, as best I can tell, Tom, you must work 60, 70 hours a week because you never seem to rest. It's amazing.
I found it helps when you don't keep track.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
All right, with that, I think we will rock local government one last time for Betsy, and we will motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Yeah, yeah, right, there we go.
Counselor Pucci,
yes.
Counselor Glystein,
yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
It was unanimous.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Tom, I'll bring the Chromebook back by the office.